The unlikely encounter. The recycled air of Starbase Omega carried the faint scent of ozone and machine oil, a smell Alex Chen had long since grown accustomed to. As he maneuvered his hover cart through the labyrinthine corridors of the station's maintenance level, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of frustration. At 28, he had hoped to be piloting starships through wormholes, not fixing faulty air scrubbers and leaky pipes. Chen to control, he spoke into his comm unit. I'm heading to Section 47B. That malfunctioning grav plate is acting up again. Copy that, Chen, came the bored reply. Try not to break anything this time. Alex rolled his eyes. One little incident with a plasma conduit, and they never let you forget it. He rounded a corner, nearly colliding with a harried-looking Zentaran. The insectoid alien chittered an apology, its mandibles clicking rapidly as it scurried past. No worries, Alex called after it, though he doubted the Zentaran understood human expressions. The encounter left him pondering, as it often did, the vast array of life forms that called Starbase Omega home. Humans were relative newcomers to the galactic stage, and sometimes Alex felt like they were still finding their footing among the stars. As he approached Section 47B, a commotion caught his attention. A group of aliens, sleek, blue-skinned humanoids he recognized as Orcs, were gathered outside one of the VIP guest quarters. Their agitated voices carried down the corridor. Ambassador Zara, please. The Council is awaiting your decision. One of them pleaded through the closed door. A muffled voice responded from within, too low for Alex to make out the words. The Orcs exchanged worried glances. Curiosity piqued. Alex slowed his hover cart. Everything all right here? He asked, trying to sound casual. The Orcs turned to him, their luminescent eyes widening slightly at the sight of a human. The tallest among them, wearing an elaborately decorated robe, stepped forward. This is a diplomatic matter, human, he said, his tone clipped. Your assistance is not required. Alex raised his hands in a placating gesture. Hey, no offense meant. I'm just here to fix the grav plate. He pointed to the panel on the floor, which was indeed flickering erratically. The Orcs' expression softened slightly. Ah, yes. Our apologies. The malfunctioning gravity has been uncomfortable. As if on cue, the grav plate surged, causing everyone to stumble. Alex steadied himself against his hover cart. Yeah, I can see that. Mind if I take a look? The Orcs conferred briefly, then nodded. Very well. But please be quick about it. We have urgent matters to attend to. Alex knelt by the panel, pulling out his multi-tool. As he worked, he couldn't help but overhear the Orcs' continued attempts to coax their ambassador out of her quarters. Ambassador Zara, please reconsider. The fate of our trade agreement with the Volcran Imperium hangs in the balance. More muffled replies from within. Alex frowned, focusing on the delicate circuitry beneath the panel. Grav plates were finicky things, requiring a skilled touch-toe. A sudden surge of energy coursed through the panel. Alex yelped, yanking his hand back. The lights in the corridor flickered, and for a moment, gravity itself seemed to waver. What have you done? One of the Orcs demanded, steadying himself against the wall. I didn't. Alex began, but he was cut off by the sound of the guest quarters door sliding open. In the doorway stood one of the most striking beings Alex had ever seen. The Orcs woman, Ambassador Zara, he presumed, was tall and graceful, her skin a deep, shimmering blue that seemed to pulse with an inner light. Her eyes, a swirling mix of silver and violet, fixed on Alex with an intensity that made him catch his breath. You, she said, her voice like liquid starlight. What did you just do? Alex swallowed hard, suddenly very aware of his oil-stained uniform and disheveled appearance. I was just trying to fix the grav plate. Ambassador, I'm sorry if I caused any disturbance. To his surprise, a smile played at the corners of her mouth. On the contrary, she said, stepping fully into the corridor. That was the first moment of peace I've felt in days. The other Aurorans looked at each other in confusion. Ambassador, one ventured. The council. Zara held up a hand, silencing him. Tell the council I will join them shortly. I believe. She paused, her gaze returning to Alex. I believe I've found a solution to our problem. Alex blinked, unsure if he heard correctly. I'm sorry. What? Ambassador Zara approached him, moving with a fluid grace that seemed to defy the station's artificial gravity. What is your name, human? Alex. Alex Chen, he managed, fighting the urge to wipe his sweaty palms on his uniform. Alex Chen, she repeated, as if savoring the sound. I have a proposition for you, one that could change the course of galactic politics and perhaps your own destiny. Alex's mind reeled. This had to be a joke, right? Things like this didn't happen to maintenance workers. They happened to dashing starship captains in holovids, not to guys who spent their days fixing toilets and air filters. But as he looked into Ambassador Zara's eyes, seeing the mix of desperation and hope there, he knew this was all too real. Whatever had just happened, whatever he had inadvertently done, had set something monumental in motion. I'm listening, he said, surprising himself with the steadiness in his voice. Ambassador Zara's smile widened, revealing teeth that glinted like polished pearls. Excellent. Gentlemen, she addressed her fellow Aurorans, please inform the council that I will be bringing a special consultant to our next session. The other Aurorans sputtered in protest, but Zara silenced them with a look. She turned back to Alex, extending a slender, blue-skinned hand. Shall we, Mr. Chen? I believe we have much to discuss. Alex hesitated for just a moment, his gaze flicking from Zara's outstretched hand to his hover cart full of tools. In that instant, he saw two futures stretching out before him. One of continued monotony, fixing broken machines in the bowels of a space station, and another filled with unknowns, with danger perhaps, but also with the promise of adventure he'd always dreamed of. He made his choice. Taking Ambassador Zara's hand, feeling the cool smoothness of her skin against his, Alex stepped into a new chapter of his life, one that would reshape not only his own destiny, but that of entire civilizations. Lead the way, Ambassador, he said, leaving behind his old life without a backward glance. As they walked away, the grav plate in Section 47B hummed to life, functioning perfectly for the first time in months. It was the first of many impossible things Alex Chen would accomplish in the days to come. Cultural exchange. Alex Chen's head was spinning as he followed Ambassador Zara through the pristine corridors of Starbase Omega's diplomatic sector. The spotless white walls and soft, ambient lighting were a far cry from the grimy maintenance tunnels he was used to. He felt acutely aware of the oil stains on his uniform and the calluses on his hands. Ambassador, he ventured, quickening his pace to walk beside her. I don't mean to be rude, but what exactly am I doing here? Zara's luminescent eyes flickered to him, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Tell me, Alex Chen, what do you know of galactic politics? He shrugged. Not much, I'm afraid. Just what I hear in the break room. Something about trade disputes and border skirmishes. The Aurorans' laughter was like tinkling crystal. A simplified view, but not entirely inaccurate. The galaxy stands on the brink of a conflict that could tear apart centuries of cooperation. And you, my unexpected friend, may hold the key to preventing it. Before Alex could process this bombshell, they arrived at a set of ornate doors. Zara placed her hand on a glowing panel, and the doors slid open with a soft hiss. The room beyond was like nothing Alex had ever seen. A massive holographic display dominated the center, showing a swirling map of the galaxy. Aliens of various species stood around it, their heated discussion falling silent as Zara and Alex entered. Esteemed colleagues, Zara announced, her voice carrying an authority that belied her graceful appearance. I present to you Alex Chen of Earth. He will be joining our negotiations as a special consultant. The room erupted in a cacophony of alien voices. Alex caught snippets of disbelief. outrage, and confusion in a dozen different languages. A towering reptilian being stepped forward, its scales shimmering with iridescent patterns. "Ambassador Zura," it hissed, "what is the meaning of this? You cannot simply bring an untrained human into these delicate negotiations." Zura's expression remained serene. "On the contrary, Ambassador Kizin, the Auroran Diplomatic Corps bylaws clearly state that each representative may bring one advisor of their choosing to any negotiation. I choose Alex Chen." The reptilian, Kizin, looked like he was about to object further, but Zura continued smoothly. "Now shall we begin? We were discussing the proposed trade routes through the Cygnus Arm, were we not?" As the various diplomats reluctantly took their seats around the holographic display, Zura guided Alex to a chair beside her. He leaned in close, whispering, "Ambassador, I have no idea what I'm doing here. I'm a maintenance worker, not a diplomat." Zura's eyes twinkled with an emotion Alex couldn't quite identify. "You are far more than that. Alex Chen, you possess a gift, one that could change everything. For now, simply observe and listen. When the time comes, you will know what to do." With that cryptic statement, she turned her attention to the ongoing discussion. Alex sat back, his mind reeling. He'd started his day fixing broken pipes, and now he was sitting in on high-level galactic negotiations. It was like something out of a fever dream. As the hours wore on, Alex found himself drawn into the complex web of interstellar politics. The issues at hand were mind-boggling in scope. Trade agreements spanning thousands of light-years, disputes over the rights to entire star systems, and delicate cultural misunderstandings that threatened to spark war. He watched in awe as Zura navigated the treacherous waters of diplomacy. Her words were like silk, smoothing over conflicts and finding common ground where none seemed to exist. But as the day progressed, he noticed a change coming over her. The serene mask began to slip, revealing flashes of fatigue and frustration. During a brief recess, Alex approached her. "Are you all right, Ambassador? You seem strained." Zura's smile was tight. "Auroran biology is different from yours, Alex. We are empaths, able to sense and influence the emotions of others. It's what makes us skilled diplomats. But in a charged environment like this, it takes a toll." Alex frowned. "Is there anything I can do to help?" She reached out, placing a cool hand on his arm. "Your concern alone is a balm, Alex. Your emotions are unique, refreshingly straightforward, yet complex in ways I've never encountered. It's part of why I brought you here." Before Alex could inquire further, the negotiations resumed. As the day wore on, tensions in the room reached a fever pitch. The reptilian Kizin and a crystalline being that looked like a sentient chandelier were locked in a heated argument over mining rights in a distant nebula. The Tiskik Consortium has held claim to the Vermilion Nebula for 3 galactic standard centuries. The crystalline being chimed, its facets flashing with agitation. Kizin's tail lashed angrily, a claim based on outdated star charts. The nebula has shifted, bringing it within Saurian space. The resources are ours by right. Alex watched as Zara attempted to mediate. Her usual grace strained the breaking point. The maelstrom of conflicting emotions in the room seemed to batter at her, and he could see her beginning to falter. Without thinking, Alex stood up. "If I may," he said, his voice cutting through the argument, "I have a suggestion." All eyes turned to him, a mixture of surprise and disdain evident in the alien faces. Sin's forked tongue flicked out in annoyance. And what could a human maintenance worker possibly contribute to this discussion? Alex swallowed hard, fighting down his nerves. He approached the holographic display, studying the swirling colors of the nebula in question. "Back on Earth, we have a saying, good fences make good neighbors. But out here in space, fences don't work so well, do they?" He manipulated the display, zooming in on the nebula. "Instead of fighting over who owns what, why not work together? Set up a joint mining operation. Share the resources, share the profits, and share the responsibility of managing the nebula's unique ecosystem. The room fell silent. Alex plowed on, the words tumbling out almost of their own accord. You could even turn it into a symbol of cooperation, the first truly collaborative effort between your species. Think of the goodwill it would generate, the positive press. It could set a precedent for resolving similar disputes all over the galaxy. As he spoke, Alex became aware of a strange sensation. It was as if his words were carrying more weight than they should, resonating with the aliens on a level beyond mere language. The hostility in the room began to dissipate, replaced by thoughtful consideration. Kizin and the crystalline being exchanged glances. A joint operation, Kizin mused, his earlier anger fading. It could work, assuming proper oversight. The Tizkik would be amenable to such an arrangement. The crystalline being chimed, its tone noticeably warmer. Perhaps we have allowed old grievances to blind us to new possibilities. As the two former adversaries began to hash out the details of their newfound cooperation, Alex became aware of Zara staring at him, her eyes wide with wonder. "How did you do that?" she whispered. Alex shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "I don't know. I just said what came to mind. I guess sometimes an outsider's perspective can help." Zara shook her head, a smile of amazement on her face. "It was more than that, Alex. Much more. I believe we've only scratched the surface of your true potential." As the day's session came to a close, with more progress made than in the previous week of negotiations, Alex found himself at the center of attention. Aliens of various species approached him, offering thanks and asking for his input on other matters. In the midst of it all, he caught Zora's eye across the room. She nodded at him, a gesture of pride in something else. A shared secret, perhaps, or the beginning of a deeper understanding. As Alex made his way back to his quarters that night, his mind buzzing with the day's events, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had changed irrevocably. He had stepped onto a much larger stage, one where the fate of entire civilizations hung in the balance. And somewhere deep inside, a part of him that he'd never known existed began to stir, hinting at abilities beyond his wildest dreams. Whatever lay ahead, Alex Chen knew one thing for certain. He was no longer just a maintenance worker. He was becoming something more, something the galaxy desperately needed. The true nature of his gift, and the challenges it would bring, were yet to be revealed. But as he drifted off to sleep that night, his dreams were filled with swirling nebula and the promise of adventures to come, crisis and revelation. The days that followed were a whirlwind for Alex Chen. He found himself thrust into the heart of galactic diplomacy, attending meetings with beings from across the known universe. His quarters had been upgraded from a cramped maintenance pod to a luxurious suite in the diplomatic wing, complete with a viewport that offered a breathtaking view of the starscape beyond Starbase Omega. But as exhilarating as it all was, Alex couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. The more he interacted with the various alien diplomats, the more he became aware of undercurrents of tension and hidden agendas. And then there was the matter of his own inexplicable abilities that seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. It was during a particularly heated negotiation session that everything came to a head. The chamber was packed with representatives from a dozen different species, all arguing over the proposed expansion of the Galactic Concordat, a treaty that had kept an uneasy peace for the past century. Ambassador Zara stood at the center of it all, her usual composure strained to the breaking point as she tried to mediate between the conflicting factions. Alex watched from his seat, feeling the familiar pressure building behind his eyes. It had started happening more frequently, a sort of sixth sense that allowed him to perceive the emotional currents in the room. Right now, those currents were a maelstrom of fear, anger, and barely contained violence. "The Concordat has outlived its usefulness," bellowed Kizin, the Saurian ambassador. "It shackles the strong to protect the weak. My people will no longer be bound by its outdated restrictions." A chorus of angry voices rose in response. Alex saw Zora wince, her empathic abilities clearly overwhelmed by the onslaught of negative emotions. Without thinking, Alex stood up. "Everyone, please," he said, his voice cutting through the din. "We need to take a step back and—" He never got to finish his sentence. At that moment, a blinding flash of light filled the chamber, followed by a deafening boom. Alex was thrown off his feet, his ears ringing as smoke filled the air. When his vision cleared, chaos reigned. Part of the chamber's ceiling had collapsed, and diplomats were scrambling in panic. Through the haze, Alex saw several armed figures entering through the newly created breach, their features hidden behind sleek, black helmets. "Death to the Concordat!" one of the intruders shouted, raising a weapon that crackled with energy. "Freedom for all species!" Time seemed to slow down for Alex. He saw the attacker's weapon swinging towards Ambassador Zora, who stood frozen in shock. Without conscious thought, Alex was moving, his body propelled by an instinct he didn't understand. He threw himself in front of Zora, just as the weapon discharged. Alex expected pain, expected to feel the searing heat of an energy blast. Instead, he felt something else, a surge of power unlike anything he'd ever experienced before. The energy from the weapon seemed to flow into him, coursing through his body like liquid fire. Alex gasped, his mind reeling as new sensations flooded his consciousness. Suddenly, he could feel every being in the room, their fears, their hopes, their very life forces pulsing around him like a cosmic symphony. Acting on pure instinct, Alex raised his hands. The energy that had entered his body now flowed outward, manifesting as shimmering waves of blue-white light. The attackers were thrown backward, their weapons clattering uselessly to the floor. But Alex didn't stop there. The energy continued to pour out of him, enveloping everyone in the chamber. And as it did, something miraculous happened. The fear and anger that had permeated the room moments before began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of calm and clarity. Alex could feel the minds of the diplomats and even the attackers, their thoughts and emotions laid bare to him. With a gentleness he didn't know he possessed, he began to soothe their fears, to untangle the knots of old grudges and misunderstandings. Images flashed through his mind. The shared history of these species, their struggles and triumphs. He saw the bigger picture, the delicate balance that held the galaxy together. And somehow, he knew how to share that vision with everyone present. When the light finally faded, Alex found himself at the center of a circle of stunned onlookers. The attackers lay unconscious on the floor, their faces no longer hidden by helmets. To Alex's shock, he recognized them as a mix of species, representatives of multiple worlds who had put aside their differences to strike at the heart of galactic cooperation. "Alex," Zora's voice was barely a whisper. She reached out to touch his arm, then pulled back, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear. What are you?" Alex looked down at his hands, still glowing faintly with residual energy. I don't know," he admitted, "but I think I'm starting to understand." The next few hours were a blur of medical examinations, security debriefings, and urgent communications with governments across the galaxy. Alex found himself at the center of a storm of attention, with everyone from scientists to military leaders clamoring to understand what had happened. It was late into the night when he finally got a moment alone with Zora. They stood by the viewport in his quarters, watching the stars wheel slowly past. "I always knew there was something special about you," Zora said softly. "From the moment we met, I sensed a potential. But this," she shook her head in wonder. "In all our records, there's never been a human who could do what you did today." Alex ran a hand through his hair, still coming to terms with the day's events. "I don't understand it myself," he admitted. "It's like, all my life, I've had this ability sleeping inside me. And now that it's awake." He trailed off, unsure how to put his feelings into words. Zora placed a cool hand on his arm. "You're not just an empath like my people, Alex. You're something more. A psychic nexus, perhaps. able to not only sense emotions but to channel and reshape them, to bridge the gaps between minds in a way I've never seen before. Alex turned to face her, seeing the swirling depths of her alien eyes. But why me? I'm nobody special. Just a maintenance worker who could barely keep the station's plumbing in order. A smile played at the corners of Zora's mouth. Perhaps that's exactly why. You see connections others miss, Alex. In machines, in people, in the very fabric of the galaxy itself. You've spent your life fixing things, bringing order to chaos. And now, it seems the universe has decided to give you the tools to do it on a grand scale. As the weight of her words sank in, Alex felt a mixture of excitement and terror. The power he'd wielded today was beyond anything he'd ever imagined. Used wrongly, it could be devastating. But used wisely, what happens now? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zora's expression grew serious. Now, my dear Alex, we face the consequences of your revelation. Some will see you as a savior, a key to lasting peace in the galaxy. Others, she hesitated. Others will see you as a threat to be controlled or eliminated. The balance of power has shifted, and not everyone will be happy about it. Alex nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling onto his shoulders. He thought of his old life, the simple routine of fixing pipes and patching hull breaches. Part of him longed for that simplicity again, but he knew there was no going back. The galaxy had called, and he had answered. Whatever comes next, he said, straightening his shoulders, I'm ready to face it, not just for humanity, but for all the beings out there who need a little help, finding the connections they've missed. Zora's smile was radiant, filled with pride and something more, a growing affection that transcended the boundaries of their different species. Then let us face it together, Alex Chen. I have a feeling the galaxy is in for quite a ride. As they turned back to the viewport, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter. Somewhere out there, ancient powers were stirring, reacting to the emergence of this unexpected human ability. Challenges lay ahead, dangers and wonders beyond imagining. But for now, in this quiet moment between the old world and the new, Alex allowed himself to feel a glimmer of hope. Whatever the future held, he was no longer just a cog in the machine. He was a force for change, a bridge between worlds. And as the first light of a new day began to creep across the stars, Alex Chen, former maintenance worker, newly discovered psychic nexus, and reluctant diplomat, prepared to take his first steps into a larger universe. Interstellar consequences. The news of Alex Chen's extraordinary abilities spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within days of the incident on Starbase Omega, every sentient species seemed to be abuzz with speculation, fear, and hope. Footage of Alex's psychic intervention, captured by the station's security systems, was broadcast on countless worlds, sparking debates in parliaments, bars, and living rooms alike. For Alex, the aftermath was a whirlwind of activity. He found himself at the center of a political and scientific storm, with delegations from every major galactic power clamoring for his attention. The once quiet diplomatic wing of Starbase Omega now bustled with activity at all hours, as beings from across the cosmos arrived to see the human nexus for themselves. I feel like a zoo exhibit, Alex muttered to Zora as they hurried down a corridor, trailed by a mixed group of diplomats and scientists. Is this what it's always like for you? The Auroran ambassador's laugh tinkled like wind chimes. Welcome to the world of high-stakes diplomacy, my dear. Though I must admit, even I'd never seen anything quite like this. They entered a large conference room, where representatives from a dozen different species waited. Alex recognized some faces, the reptilian Kazin, the crystalline Tiskek ambassador, while others were new to him. All eyes fixed on him as he took his seat, and he felt the familiar pressure building behind his eyes as he sensed the swirling emotions in the room. A tall, willowy being with iridescent skin stood up. Esteemed colleagues, it began, its voice a melodious hum, we are gathered here to discuss the implications of the abilities demonstrated by Alex Chen of Earth. I am Sylith, speaking on behalf of the Galactic Science Consortium. Alex listened as Sylith outlined the scientific community's findings. Apparently, his DNA showed subtle but significant differences from standard human genetics. Theories ranged from latent psychic potential activated by his time in space to the result of some unknown cosmic radiation. What matters, Sylith concluded, is that Mr. Chen represents a new factor in the galactic equation, one that could tip the balance of power in unpredictable ways. The room erupted into heated discussion. Some species saw Alex as a threat to their autonomy, fearing that his abilities could be used to manipulate minds on a massive scale. Others viewed him as a potential peacekeeper, a neutral party who could resolve conflicts before they escalated into war. Through it all, Alex remained silent, overwhelmed by the weight of expectation placed upon him. He caught Zora's eye across the table, drawing strength from her reassuring smile. Finally, Kizin's gravelly voice cut through the clamor. "We're overlooking a crucial point," the Saurian ambassador growled. "Chen may be the first of his kind, but what if he's not the last? What if more humans develop these abilities?" A hush fell over the room as the implications sank in. Humanity, already seen as upstarts in the galactic community, could become a superpower overnight if more psychic nexuses emerged. "We must study him," a insectoid being chittered excitedly. "Discover the source of his powers. Learn to replicate them." "Out of the question," Zora interrupted, her voice sharp. "Alex is not a lab specimen to be dissected. He's a sentient being with rights." "Rights?" scoffed a bulbous creature floating in a containment field. "He's a potential weapon of mass destruction. For the safety of all, he should be contained, studied." Alex felt something snap inside him. He stood up abruptly, and the room fell silent. "I'm right here," he said quietly, but his voice carried to every corner of the room. "I can hear you all, you know. Your fears, your ambitions, your wonder. I feel it all." He took a deep breath, centering himself as Zora had taught him. As he did, he became aware of the energy flowing through him. Not the overwhelming surge from the attack, but a steady, controlled current. "I understand your concerns," he continued. "Believe me, I'm just as scared and confused as you are, but I'm not a weapon to be used or a problem to be solved. I'm a person, trying to figure out my place in a universe that suddenly got a whole lot bigger." As he spoke, Alex felt his newfound abilities stirring. Without conscious effort, he began to project. Not forcefully, but gently, allowing the aliens around him to sense his sincerity, his determination, and his hope for understanding. "I don't know why I have these abilities," he admitted, "but I do know this. I want to use them to help. To bridge the gaps between species, to foster understanding where there's fear. I can't promise I'll always get it right, but I swear to you all, I will try my best to be a force for good in this galaxy." The room was utterly still as Alex's words sank in. He could feel the shift in the emotional atmosphere, from suspicion and fear to cautious optimism, and, in some cases, genuine hope. Aelith was the first to break the silence. "Perhaps," the scientist mused, "we have been approaching this all wrong. Instead of seeing Mr. Chen as a subject to be studied or a threat to be contained, we should view him as a colleague, a partner in navigating the complex waters of galactic politics." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Even Kizin nodded grudgingly, his reptilian features softening slightly. "It seems," Zora said, her eyes shining with pride, "that our human friend has once again demonstrated his unique gift for bringing people together." As the meeting adjourned, with plans made for further discussions and cooperative research, Alex found himself surrounded by curious aliens. But this time, the atmosphere was different. Instead of fearful scrutiny, he sensed genuine interest and a willingness to engage. Later, as he and Zara walked along the station's promenade, Alex finally allowed himself to relax. "That went better than I expected," he admitted. Zara laughed. "You continue to surprise me, Alex Chen." You may not have years of diplomatic training, but you have something far more valuable: an innate understanding of people, regardless of their species. Alex smiled, but it faded quickly. It's not all solved, though, is it? There will still be those who fear me, who want to use me for their own ends. Of course, Zoran nodded soberly. Your existence has changed the game, Alex. Some will see you as a threat to the old order. Others will try to manipulate you for their own gain. The path ahead will not be easy. They stopped at a viewport, gazing out at the star-studded expanse. A ship was departing, sleek and silver, carrying word of the day's events to distant worlds. So what do we do now? Alex asked. Zara's cool hand found his, their fingers intertwining in a gesture that bridged the gap between their species. We move forward, she said simply. We learn, we grow, and we face whatever challenges come our way, together. As they stood there, watching the galaxy spin on, Alex felt a sense of purpose settling over him. He was no longer just Alex Chen, accidental diplomat. He was a nexus, a point of connection between worlds, between minds, between the past and a future yet to be written. The consequences of his emergence were still unfolding, rippling across the cosmos in ways he could scarcely imagine. But for the first time since his abilities had manifested, Alex felt truly ready to face them. Whatever lay ahead, be it wonder or danger, discovery or conflict, he would meet it head-on, not just for himself or for humanity, but for all the beings across the galaxy who looked to the stars with hope and dreamed of a better tomorrow. The human nexus had awakened, and the universe would never be the same. A new era begins. 6 months had passed since Alex Chen's abilities had been revealed to the galaxy, and the ripples of that event had grown into waves that touched every corner of known space. Starbase Omega, once a relatively quiet diplomatic outpost, had transformed into the center of a new galactic order. Alex stood before the viewport in his quarters, gazing out at the sprawling space station that now surrounded Omega. New wings and modules had been added at a frenetic pace, accommodating the influx of diplomats, scientists, and curious visitors from 100 different worlds. Ships of all shapes and sizes crowded the docking bays, their designs as varied as the beings who crewed them. A soft chime announced a visitor. "Enter," Alex called, already knowing who it was before the door slid open. Ambassador Zara glided into the room, her blue skin shimmering in the starlight. "Are you ready?" she asked, a mix of excitement and apprehension in her voice. Alex took a deep breath, straightening the formal attire he still wasn't quite used to wearing. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied with a crooked smile. Together, they made their way through the station's corridors. Beings of all species nodded respectfully as they passed, some even bowing or performing elaborate gestures of deference. Alex still found it disconcerting, but Zara had helped him understand the importance of these rituals in interstellar diplomacy. They entered a vast, newly constructed chamber. Tiered seating rose on all sides, filled with representatives from every known sentient species in the galaxy. At the center stood a circular platform, bathed in soft light. As Alex and Zara took their places on the platform, a hush fell over the assembled crowd. Alex closed his eyes for a moment, reaching out with his abilities to sense the emotional currents in the room. Excitement, hope, and yes, still some fear and suspicion. But overall, a sense of anticipation for what was to come. A familiar figure approached the podium. Thyleth, the willowy scientist who had become one of Alex's closest allies over the past months. Esteemed representatives of the galaxy, Thyleth's melodious voice rang out. "We are gathered here today to witness a historic moment, the signing of the Galactic Concordat of Harmony." Murmurs rippled through the crowd as Thyleth continued. "This new accord, built upon the foundation of the old Galactic Concordat, represents a fundamental shift in how we, as a galactic community, approach diplomacy, scientific cooperation, and mutual defense." Alex stepped forward, his voice steady as he addressed the assembly. The Concordat of Harmony is more than just a treaty, he said. It's a commitment to understanding, to bridging the gaps between our diverse species and cultures. It's a promise that we will face the challenges of the future not as separate races, but as one united galactic community. He paused, making eye contact with various representatives. Kizin, the Tiskek ambassador, and others who had once viewed him with suspicion, but now looked on with cautious optimism. I stand before you not as a human, not as a psychic nexus, but as a fellow citizen of this vast and wondrous cosmos. My abilities may be unique, but the desire for peace, for progress, for a better future, that's something we all share, regardless of our origins. Zara stepped up beside him, her cool hand finding his in a gesture that had become familiar and comforting. The Concordat establishes the Interstellar Diplomatic Corps, she explained, a neutral body headquartered here on Starbase Omega, dedicated to fostering communication and resolving conflicts before they can escalate. But it goes beyond that, Alex added. The Concordat also creates the Galactic Scientific Alliance, pooling our knowledge and resources to tackle the greatest mysteries of the universe. And perhaps most importantly, it lays the groundwork for the Cosmic Cultural Exchange Program, allowing citizens from all worlds to live, work, and study on each other's planets. As Alex spoke, he felt the familiar surge of energy within him. But this time, he embraced it, consciously projecting a sense of unity and shared purpose to everyone in the chamber. He saw eyes widen and postures relax as his psychic message reached them, not controlling but gently encouraging open-mindedness and cooperation. There will be challenges ahead, he acknowledged. Old grudges don't disappear overnight. Misunderstandings will occur. But we believe, that by working together, by striving to understand each other, we can build a future brighter than any of us could achieve alone. With that, Alex and Zara turned to the holographic display that had shimmered into existence before them. Together, they pressed their hands to the glowing surface, officially signing the Concordat of Harmony into effect. One by one, representatives from each world present did the same, their diverse appendages, hands, claws, tentacles, and appendages Alex had no name for, all coming together in a powerful symbol of unity. As the last signature was recorded, a cheer went up from the assembled beings. Alex felt a swell of emotion, not just his own, but the combined hope and excitement of thousands of individuals, washing over him like a tidal wave. Hours later, after the ceremonies had concluded and the celebratory receptions were winding down, Alex found himself back at his favorite viewport. Zara joined him, her presence a soothing balm after the intensity of the day. "So," she said softly, "how does it feel to have changed the course of galactic history?" Alex chuckled, shaking his head. "Honestly, overwhelming. A year ago, I was unclogging waste recyclers. Now," he gestured at the bustling station around them, "at the stars beyond." Zara's laugh was like tinkling crystals. "You've come a long way, Alex Chen. We all have, thanks to you." "Not just me," Alex insisted. "I may have been the catalyst, but all of this, it's the result of thousands of people choosing to come together, to take a chance on a better future." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as a ship departed, its hull gleaming with the insignia of the newly formed Interstellar Diplomatic Corps. "You know," Alex said thoughtfully, "even with all these changes, there's still so much we don't understand. About my abilities, about the true nature of psychic energy, and what else might be out there, waiting to be discovered." Zara's eyes twinkled with excitement. "Are you proposing an expedition, Alex?" He grinned, feeling a familiar thrill of adventure. "Well, the Concordat does emphasize the importance of exploration and scientific discovery. And who better to lead a mission into uncharted space than a human psychic nexus and an Auroran empath? It would be a shame to let your newfound diplomatic skills go to waste," Zara teased. "I'm sure we could rustle up a ship and a crew eager for adventure." As they began to excitedly discuss the possibilities, Alex felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over him. He had found his place in the universe, not as a maintenance worker, not as a reluctant diplomat, but as a true bridge between worlds. The journey ahead was uncertain, filled with potential wonders and dangers beyond imagining. But as he stood there with Zora, watching the galaxy spin on, Alex Chen knew one thing for certain. Whatever the future held, they would face it together. Human and Auroran, psychic nexus and empath, two beings from different worlds united by a shared vision of a brighter tomorrow. A new era had begun for the galaxy, and Alex couldn't wait to see where it would lead.